All righty, folks. Well, happy Friday to you all, and welcome to another edition of COVID-19 CARES Act Funding 101 with the Kansas Association of Counties and the Recovery Office. I'm Bruce Clodney, the Executive Director for the Kansas Association of Counties, and it's a pleasure to have you all here with us today on a beautiful, warm Friday afternoon. It's 107 degrees heat index outside, so hopefully wherever you are, it's a little bit cooler and you're able to get some stuff done. So today we've got a very good offering for you, but before we get into it real quick, just a few announcements. I know that the Jay is going to talk a lot more about all of this stuff, but I just want to kind of prime the pump and get the ball rolling. The money should be coming your way. We've had a meeting this morning with the KAC board, and several of them had received their funding, some had not. So just remember, the Jay said on Wednesday, if your funding isn't there by Monday, please give them an email at recovery@kansas.gov or ks.gov. Make sure that they get to hear from you if you don't have money in the bank come Monday. Also, make sure you check the website for all the documentation, recordings, and everything that's available to you all is up there now at covid.ks.gov. And also be sure to check out the KAC website. Kim Qualls has been working very hard to keep things updated and to post useful and information for you all, and that's kansascounties.org. And be sure to stay tuned for those of you that are elected officials that the governor is going to have her Friday afternoon presentation webinar with elected officials at 3:30. So hopefully you've gotten that connection information as well. And last but not least, if you are at your computer and you're checking your email regularly, you'll see that Kim in the office just sent out an email about 5 minutes ago announcing that the KAC annual conference has been canceled. So we're joining the ranks of some of the other folks that were planning conferences around that same time. And with the state of the affairs going on right now, it's not wise or safe to host an in-person conference. So we'll be working on putting together some sort of virtual event for all of you to participate in, so we can make sure that you stay connected to the KAC. We can conduct all the business and hopefully talk a little bit more about what's going on across the state at that time. So with that said, let me turn it over to Vijay and take it away, my friend.
Before I start here, Bruce, can you just confirm that the sound is clear and it's good volume?
The sound is clear and it sounds good. So right. Let me turn on, so you should be able to control the screen and.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate that. So today we're going to do a couple of different things. As we get started today, I'd just like to say, if you want to go to the covid.ks.gov website under webinars, under county resources, you'll see that the FAQ is posted, which we'll go through today, and today's presentation is posted, so you can follow along with us there. Today, we're going to be going over Office of Recovery updates and housekeeping, as well as another review of the direct aid plan and the changes that we announced on Wednesday, plus some frequently asked questions regarding that plan. And then Taylor Hawkins is on the line to go through some frequently asked questions regarding the reimbursement reporting template. And then finally, we'll talk about some next steps, and we'll end there. Again, we're going to try to monitor the chat. It's just two of us today, so we're going to try to monitor the chat as much as possible. But if not, we'll try to call out some of the answers while we're speaking, but just be patient with us. We have a little bit of a skeleton crew today. So round one update. I want to be very clear here. So we have initiated payments to all 105 counties. They've all been processed. So again, if you don't receive those payments by Monday, please email us at recovery@ks.gov. Again, that's recovery@ks.gov, or let us know. Obviously there's a form online that I know a lot of you have been filling out for questions and things like that. Not the guidance interpretation form, but I know that you all have been using multiple ways to get in touch with us. But for any specific issues related to payments, email us at recovery@kas.gov. Notification was provided to primary contacts for that payment on Wednesday. Currently, there are no counties that have failed to submit their resolution, and we only have one county that hasn't submitted their primary contact form, and I think we're close to getting that. So 104 counties have submitted their primary contact form, and 105 have submitted the resolution. Regardless of if you submitted your primary contact form or not, you'll still get the payment. We just want to make sure that everybody has a primary contact that we can be in constant communication with. If you are the primary contact for your county and you did not receive an email from us on Wednesday and you had submitted your form before Wednesday, please let us know as soon as possible. It may be an issue with an email being spelled incorrectly or something like that. So please let us know if you aren't receiving the primary contact emails. And again, there should be one email in your inbox from Wednesday saying that the payment for your county has been processed. So I just want to thank everybody very quickly for getting your resolutions in on time and getting all of the primary contact forms done. We really appreciate your partnership on that. I know that it required a lot of coordination at the county level to get that through. So we really appreciate that. And we think that's going to make this process a lot smoother. In relation to that, KAC, the Kansas League of Municipalities, have put together specific city level resolutions that can be modified for schools or other entities. And I know KAC has put together an MOU sample, so you all can use those as resources for your subrecipients as well to ensure sharing of accountability and responsibility for eligible expenditure of funds. Round 2 update. I know that was a big question at the last webinar. The next meeting will be July 20th on Monday at 1 p.m. To discuss proposals for round 2. All the materials will be posted on the website. The link to the live stream will be on the governor's YouTube page, which I've linked here. If you go to the governor's YouTube page, it should be live stream starting at 1 p.m. The steering committee will meet on Monday. The executive committee will meet either on Tuesday or Wednesday, but all the proposals will be available to you all to review starting on Monday during that meeting. So you'll be able to follow along with everybody and see what the state is planning on investing in. I'll give a couple of previews here. All of the investments are related to the priorities that have been previously outlined by the SPARK committee. So there will be investments for example, small business grant programs, or there will be investments related to increasing our testing capacity. So if you want to get an idea before Monday of what we plan on investing in, just look at the priorities from the SPARK committee, and there will be programs tailored to all of those priorities, and especially the top priorities. So we're going to try our best to make sure that they hit every single thing that the SPARK committee talked about, though. I want to call that out. Few housekeeping. Please try to centralize your communication requests for guidance interpretations or your primary point of contact questions, everything through whoever you've designated in your county level. It's hard for us to balance and if there's a lot of different people from the same county asking questions. So if you have colleagues and you're the primary point of contact who have questions, ask them to go through you. And again, if you're not the primary point of contact, please go through that individual as much as possible. We understand that there are instances which doesn't make sense. Maybe if you're a city or a school and you need to get your question answered very quickly, but we're just asking that you first go to your primary point of contact and have them submit those requests. Again, requests for guidance interpretation is to determine eligibility of expenses. It's not to answer questions on forms or deadlines or anything like that. So restrict that to specifically eligibility of expenses. I know there's a lot of questions around when we're going to get all of those questions answered. I can tell you now we're hoping to have, and we will do our utmost best to have the first round of those done next week. So look out for that, and I hope to go through those on the webinar next week. But the FAQ is up, and that includes some of the information, but I know there's a lot of questions on specifics for eligibility that we'll try to get a first round done next week. Office of Recovery updates. Again, I talked about this on Wednesday. Federal guidance can continue to be found online via that link. You can submit your direct aid plan early if you'd like to. Public educational institutions, again, if you're in multiple counties, a school's in multiple counties, the county that the headquarters is in is responsible at the end of the day, but they can choose to share that. So if you have an adjacent county which has a bunch of school buildings for a school district and they're not the headquarters county, you can ask them and share costs with them as needed for the school buildings that are in their county. We want that to be an equitable process as much as possible. There's been a lot of questions regarding community colleges and higher educational institutions. Again, I want to say that that is a priority of the SPARK committee as well. So you'll see some proposals related to that on Monday. But again, those institutions can get money from your county, like for example, community colleges as needed. I just wanted to call that out, but that will be a part of the proposals on Monday. So I want to start here by going through the changes to the direct aid template in more detail, and then calling out some of the resources that we've pulled out here. And then I'll go through some frequently asked questions that I've seen on the direct aid template. Right before I do that, I'm just going to go through and show you where the FAQ is so that you know where that is, and if you haven't been able to find it yet. So I'm going to actually just start from the beginning of this so that you all know exactly where to go to find all this information. I don't know if we've done this before. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. So you go to covid.kas.gov, you click on Office of Recovery and CARES Act, you scroll down. This meeting materials tab is specifically for the SPARK committee. So if I click on meeting materials, I can see all of the meetings that the SPARK committee has had for state level expenditure of funds. So everything we've had for round 2, round 3, approving round 1, for example, all the presentations and even the Treasury guidance can be found in their meeting materials. If you go back under county resources as well, you'll find all the resources that are really relevant to the work that you all are doing. So here you can find the direct aid form, the direct aid form memo, which we'll go through in a second, the reimbursement reporting template, the city resolution template, and as much federal guidance as we've gotten, we posted here. Under webinars, you can actually find the new FAQ, the county FAQ for 715. We'll post it on the front page. We just didn't have time to post it on the front page and this page as well. But if you go to webinars, you'll be able to see every presentation or every document we've presented in a webinar is going to be up here. And if you click on County FAQ 715, that's the latest round of frequently asked question determinations. Finally, here's the submission portal. Again, if you're going to do a guidance interpretation request, that's only for eligibility determinations. Fill out this form, submit it like you've been doing. The original county FAQ is here, and then the toolkit is here as well. So before I jump into the direct aid form, I just want to point out this is the FAQ for today. What we've done related, I'm going to call out a couple of these just so you all are aware that they're here. Nonprofits are eligible for reimbursement. There's a lot of questions around the difference between a business disruption and a revenue shortfall. Revenue shortfall directly refers to public institutions. So the goal of the CARES Act was to provide funds for interruptions or revenue losses only to small businesses, not to state and local governments. So when you see business disruptions, that's a specific classification that the CARES Act said for small businesses will allow you to fund grants to cover losses that they've incurred because of stay-at-home orders. But you can't do that for anything that's not a small business. So you can't do that for a state or local government, for example. And that means that we can't use any money to supplant losses in revenues like taxes incurred due to COVID-19 for state and local governments. What we can do specifically only for businesses is say, X business suffered this much in losses because of a required closure. I'm going to provide them a grant to cover that cost. The definition of small business is up to the government. So there's no level of employees or revenue to determine a small business, but it has to be a reasonable definition of a small business. So I know that's kind of confusing and it's difficult, but the only folks that are carved out to get money for revenue losses are small businesses. Again, reimbursed wages can be both benefits and gross wages. Applicants cannot use funds to cover revenue shortfalls. There's been a lot of questions around interest-bearing accounts. Counties are discouraged from putting funds in interest-bearing accounts because of the complexities of investing and reporting and accounting for all of those interest payments, because they all have to be then reported and spent on eligible expenditures. If you've already done so, please let us know. But if you haven't done so, we're discouraging you all from doing that because of the complexities associated. But if you have done so, please let us know. Duplication of funds. The federal government is very clear that if they have reimbursed an entity for funds, counties or the state cannot provide reimbursement for that same expense. So you should ensure that anybody that's asking for a reimbursement has not already gotten money from the federal government for that reimbursement to ensure that nothing is double counted. Finally, there's a question around administrative costs. We are recommending 5% allocated for administrative costs. That is our recommendation. You can use the direct aid plan to clearly illustrate what is an administrative cost. I know the answer here is wrong, so we'll have to give you an updated version of this. Apologize. But again, we're recommending 5%. A couple of other things. I will say, if a county transfers funds to a subrecipient, the subrecipient has to complete that report and give it back to the county. So I will call that out. And finally, there's been a lot of questions regarding the direct aid plan here. So let me go through that right now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and share the direct aid plan, and then Taylor will go over accounting and reporting with the reimbursement reporting sheet. Give me 1 second here. Hopefully everyone can see my screen here. Bruce, can you just let me know if you can see the spreadsheet on the screen?
Yes, we can see the spreadsheet on the screen fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So this is the county direct aid spending plan that we released on Wednesday. And I want to just one second. Taylor said she's having some issues with her Zoom. So I know that you all are asking questions via chat, so please be patient. She'll jump back on whenever she can get back online here. The direct aid plan. So the changes that we made, again, there's 3 main changes. One is we added a budget narrative section to the program tab. So any specific program that you plan on doing, we're asking that you fill out a brief budget narrative section. So you can go to the example program to see what sections that you need to fill out. There was a question regarding what is the difference between materials and supplies and capital outlays. We've illustrated that here through a difference in how much the individual expensive cost. So anything above $1,500 is considered a capital outlay. And the goal of this is just to ensure that you all can know from anybody that's submitting you a program idea, and even if you are instituting a program, that we know and you know what different positions are going to be hired, what different contracting services are going to be used. So that's clear there. So that's the first change. The second change is we added a transfer tab specifically for county level transfers to other entities. So transfers are any bulk exchange of funds to a subrecipient. So I know the best example that I can give is a lot of you have been asking us, I just want to give $400,000 to, I just want to give $400,000 to a school district, or I want to give $400,000 to a city in my county and have them spend on whatever they need to spend on. I don't want to have to individually be in charge of buying things for them and them getting reimbursed. So the easiest way to do that is take your city or your school district, copy and paste a blank version of the transfers tab, and we've given you an example here. Copy and paste this and into a separate spreadsheet, send it over to them to fill out, and then copy and paste it back in here. I'm going to go through each of these things specifically just so it's very clear. Primary transfer recipient, it's just going to be the school or whoever is getting the money. Include the name of the organization, the tax ID, the contact email, transfer title, purpose, a timeline, when they plan on expending the funds by, and again, what populations are impacted. And finally, we are asking everybody to submit as much of an itemized budget as possible. So if you go back to the example transfer here, if you're going to give a school a certain amount of money, they just need to say, hey, I'm going to spend it on Zoom, plastic barriers, maybe other iPads or something like that. Whatever they need to spend it on, we just want to be very clear in this tab. The other thing that I know that people have had a lot of questions about is what is the difference between a program and a transfer? So a program is anything that you establish to provide through an application process to provide funds, materials, supplies, etc., to outside organizations that's managed within the county and is dispersed through some sort of application. So a business grant program, for example, or you're doing a PPE program for local nursing homes or something like that. And anything that requires a competitive application process, that's considered a program. Or you specifically want to enhance an existing program that you have that's COVID related, then you can illustrate that here and just let us know, hey, it's already an existing program. A transfer is basically like taking your direct aid money and just giving a portion of it to another entity to spend flexibly. So taking $400,000 from your pot and giving it to somebody else so that they can spend it the way that they need to spend it and purchase those things on their own and not need a reimbursement. The last portion of this that's been changed, apart from the programs and transfers tab, is the reporting tools, the allocation tools. So when you're finished with the spreadsheet, what you'll do is come back to here and say, I got $1 million total. I got $250,000 in reimbursements from the other spreadsheet. So take the total from the other reporting spreadsheet and put it in here. I have $100,000 in planned independent expenditures. And then I would list out each program. So if I have 5 programs, list out each program and how much it costs. And finally, everything should equal 0 because you add up everything that you're reimbursing and everything that you're budgeting for moving forward, and that should equal your total county allocation. Finally, the monthly spending planning estimation tool. This is a tool just to help you and us understand when the funds should be spent by. This is by the date that you're giving the money to the subrecipient, not by when they spend it. So if you're giving $400,000 to the school, just put the date in which the funds leave your bank account. You don't have to go in and say, oh, they plan on buying the Zoom in November, so I have to count that as a November expense. So that's the 3 new things that we've added.
Vijay,
Next, yeah.
Vijay, can I jump in here for a second? I'm reading down the chat, and several questions are coming up still about eligibility of organizations to be reimbursed by this money. And could you make kind of a few blanket statements about who's eligible? Because I know you and I have talked about that all organizations are eligible. It's the expense that you have to be paying attention to. Would you address that a little bit? Because I'm looking through, because people are getting nonprofits versus businesses versus community centers or community health centers, that sort of stuff. They're still kind of confused as who is eligible for the funding.
I'll start with, according to the resolution, you are required to provide reimbursements to public educational institutions and cities and other municipalities within your county. So in terms of what you're required to provide a reimbursement to, it is schools or other public institutions within your county. That's what you're required to provide reimbursements to. Other entities are eligible for reimbursements. For example, if you want to reimburse a community health center, for example, those institutions are eligible for reimbursements. So you can provide reimbursement to those, but you're not required to. I've gotten a lot of questions regarding, do I provide businesses reimbursements or do I create a new program? And what we would say is it is easier for you all to stick with, for reimbursements, to stick with providing it just to public institutions, schools, for example, and then other institutions that you think are necessary, and then or other entities that you think are necessary. And for businesses, to create a business grant program within your county to provide grants to businesses for all of the expenses that they would have. So that's the easier thing to do. Instead of worrying about for each business having them submit their reimbursements to you, it's easier for you to create a business grant program, because like we talked about earlier, for businesses, that money can be used for covering losses due to COVID-19 required closures. There's additional flexibility there. So I would say for small businesses, create a grant. If you want to provide them funds, create a grant program within your county to do so. I don't know if, Bruce, does that answer your question?
You answered it wonderfully. And the only other question follow-up I have is, what about nonprofits? Because are those lumped into the business category or some other category?
Nonprofits, they can't receive funds to cover revenue losses.
Okay.
But they can receive reimbursements for COVID-related expenditures. So you can give them reimbursements or funds for COVID-related expenditures. So let me give you a couple of clear examples here. You can give a nonprofit money to buy laptops or to do telework or to move their services online, for example, or to buy PPE, or to buy plastic barriers for their offices. You can give them money, both reimburse them for things they've already bought related to COVID-19, but also give them new money to buy things directly related to COVID-19. What you can't do for nonprofits, according to the current guidance, is provide them money to cover revenue losses. Okay. So if they lost money due to revenue, to required closure or something, you can't provide that to a nonprofit. You can only provide those to small businesses. But you can provide them bulk. So like you can do a grant program for nonprofits as long as all the money that's going to them is specifically for COVID-19 related expenses, and none of it is covering pre-budgeted or revenue losses or something like that. So if a nonprofit comes to you and says, hey, I bought a bunch of barriers, and I bought a bunch of I bought a bunch of PPE and I want to get that reimbursed, you can do that, or you can, I think it's easier if you just provide, or you can do that, or you can do a grant program for PPE moving forward, because I think we have to be clear that there are expenses they've already incurred and that they may incur in the future. So for things that they may incur in the future, it might be better for you to say, hey, I'm giving you a pot of money to buy PPE, and then for reimbursement they've already done, say, let me know what you've spent, and if I think that's something I want to pay money for at the county level, I'll do that. Again, you're not required to provide reimbursements to those entities, but you can choose to do so if you would like to. For businesses and for nonprofits, you'll see on Monday, there will be some additional money at the state level to supplement grants and things like that. So watch out for that on Monday.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vijay. I'm sorry to interrupt, but those were two things that I see in the chat a lot. So I appreciate that.
So, okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do now, query very quickly, is I'm going to share the memo, the direct aid form memo, just so you all can see that very quickly. And then hopefully Taylor is on, but if she's not on, I can just go through her section. I think she's having some trouble with her internet connection. So the direct aid memo is also online. You saw it earlier when I went through the website. It goes through step by step how to fill out the direct aid plan. So, sorry, I'm scrolling quite a bit, but I wanted to just see, start maybe with the additional clarification of terms. So we've defined all of the key terms here. So I know I just said them out loud, the difference between a transfer and a program, but you can see that here. We've also clarified the difference between the reimbursement reporting form and the direct aid form. I think the best way to think about the direct aid form is it's a budget for what you want to spend the money on moving forward. So the county reimbursement form is what you've already spent on and want to get reimbursed from March 1st to July 31st. And the direct aid plan is just, hey, this is what I'm budgeting moving forward for different programs, different transfers, different independent expenditures at the county level. This plan must be approved before you spend the direct funds. So if you want to get it to us before August 15th, we'll get you a determination before then. I know there's a lot of questions around the deadline. Again, as we mentioned before, the deadlines are set by the State Finance Council, this specific one, but we are reviewing these things constantly. So I just want to put that out there, that we understand that it's a difficult deadline, but we'll try to get you as many resources as we can before the 15th, and we'll constantly review that as needed. Finally, how to complete the direct aid form. Again, step by step of how to fill this out. I won't go through this in detail, but again, make sure you're filling out all of the details of these sections. And I would just say that the easiest way to do it is to copy and paste the tabs and send it to whoever needs to fill it out, and then copy and paste it back in here, so you aren't having to mess with the spreadsheet and you have the school or the city fill this out for you. So I would say that's something that you can easily do to get this filled out quickly and just make sure you have the totals correct. Next, and Bruce, if there's any other major questions in the chat, please just let me know and I can address them. I just saw a question: is column F is column F in the spreadsheet deliberately hidden? I think you may be talking about this spreadsheet or maybe another spreadsheet. In all of these spreadsheets, there is a column that is deliberately hidden. It is a formula column to make the expenditure category and expenditure subcategory work. So you might see that there is a hidden one, and it would look like these two lines up here that I'm circling my cursor around. So you don't need to unhide that column. It's just a formula column to make sure the expenditure category and subcategory work. Okay, I'm going to go back to the FAQ here. So before I get into the reporting spreadsheet, the direct aid plan, let me go through some of the major questions that we've gotten on the direct aid plan. So the first thing is, what about unplanned expenditures? So let's say that in November, there's a big outbreak in your county and you didn't foresee a bunch of expenditures regarding that outbreak. You can amend your direct aid plan based on changes based on the disease. So that being said, we will work with you on a case-by-case basis if there's additional funds that you need because of those new outbreaks. So if you see that there's in November or October that there's a huge spike in your county, or there's a huge amount of expenses coming in for some reason, and that just won't meet how much money you've gotten budgeted for those expenses in the direct aid plan, please let us know, and we'll work with you on a case-by-case basis to see if there's additional money we can provide your county for those expenses. But right now, we'd say the best thing to do is to try to plan as best as possible using your direct aid plan for the money that you have been given, but knowing that you can amend it if there's something that comes up that you didn't plan for. Next, there's a lot of confusion around, is the direct aid plan is that direct aid plan the way that I report my expenditures? No. There will be an expenditure report that you fill out every month for what you actually spent money on. The direct aid plan is simply a budget or just a way for you to tell us, or a plan or a way for you to tell us what you intend to spend the money on, and then you'll actually give us the monthly reporting or expenditure report that tells us what you actually did spend the money on for that month. There's questions around, can I create a general fund for fall COVID-19 response? The answer that I would give there is be as specific as you can as to what that fund is used for. So if you want to create a program for your county and fill it out in the program tab, if you want to create a program for your county that's like PPE fund or something like that, then you can definitely do so. But if it's a fund, if it's money being set aside for something, we want to be very clear or specific as possible. What are the intended uses of that money? So if I'm setting aside money just generally, what would that be used for? PPE, or what it would be used for testing supplies or what have you, just be clear in the program tab. Finally, is the direct aid plan for round 1 or rounds 2 and 3? The direct aid plan is only for your round 1 allocations. Rounds 2 and 3 are state responsibilities. So for money up until December, fill out your direct aid plan for the money that you've gotten through round 1 allocations. Okay. The way that the process is going to work, again, just to be very clear, you'll submit the plan, you'll get a determination back from us saying everything looks good, and then you can start spending the money, and every month you'll tell us how much money you ended up spending. So next, I'm going to go through the reimbursement and reporting template questions. Before I do that, Taylor, are you on? Okay, so I'm just going to go through these. Right before I do so, I'm going to call out and pull up the actual form itself, because I know that there were bugs in the previous form, but I just want to show everybody that we have gotten them fixed so that it's very clear what the bugs were and what the changes that we had are. So first, if everybody can see my screen here, the bug that was changed was sometimes when you're doing expenditure category, it wouldn't show up what the subcategory was. So now every tile, once you click the expenditure category, it should show you what the subcategories are. Like I just showed you there, sometimes it originally shows up as blank, but all you have to do is scroll up and it'll show you what the actual subcategories are. So if I go to payroll or let's do one that has a lot of public health expenses, for example, you'll be able to see all the different types of public health expenses. And that works for every tile on the spreadsheet, and same thing on this one. I think there's a question about some columns being, again, some columns being hidden. Yes, that's true, and that's just for the purposes of coding the spreadsheet. So that's, let me go through the frequently asked questions on the county reimbursement reporting form. Me here, I know it's just my voice constantly, but and I know that Taylor's not online, so there's some chat that are piling up a little bit, but we'll try to answer those here at the end, or get you a written version of that, which is what we're doing here with the FAQ.
Hey, let me jump in here. Hey, Vijay, let me jump in because you're tired of your voice, you said. And I've got a question here. It says, can you please get it says, can the direct aid plan contain provisions for expenses incurred between March and July? For example, nonprofits who come forward seeking reimbursements. Can you talk a little bit more about what provisions what that means and what a provision looks like?
I'm sorry, Bruce, can you repeat the first part of that?
Yes. Can the direct aid plan contain provisions for expenses incurred between March and July? For example, nonprofits who come forward seeking reimbursements.
The answer, I think, is, so I think the question is, if I'm understanding correctly, if you don't want to reimburse them, but it is still an expense from March or July, but you want to put it in your direct aid form instead? Yes. So the answer is yes. So it doesn't matter necessarily when the expense was or when the expense happened at the subrecipient level. If you don't want to reimburse them in this current report, but you want to set aside funds in your direct aid plan to do so later, just let us know in the direct aid plan.
Okay. Yep, that sounds like an answer. Great.
And I think that relates to another question that we've gotten quite a bit, which is, what if I have reimbursements in November or December? We want to try to limit those as much as possible, but that's okay. And you can amend your direct aid plan or just let us know through your expenditure report that, hey, I actually ended up reimbursing a county or somebody that submitted their reimbursements late or something like that. Just let us know through your monthly expenditure report. But the idea, and I'll step back a little bit, the idea for having reimbursements versus direct aid was so that you all, starting in August 15th, didn't have to foot the bill for any of your expenses, and you could just use this money to buy it, and you didn't have to use your county general fund to buy things and get them reimbursed later. So as much as you can, try to get all your reimbursements together by August 15th, because the idea is moving forward, you don't have to worry about getting things reimbursed. You can just use money that you have sitting in the pot, and you don't have to have a delay there. So that was the idea for us for splitting this up between reimbursements and direct aid. So just clarifying that. But again, something comes up, that's okay. So I'm going to go through this quickly, and you guys can go through this as well on your own. Again, this is on the website. Does the county have to submit all reimbursement requests made by other entities? Yes, you can use the subrecipient reports to illustrate reimbursement requests by any subrecipients, including cities. Again, I want to be very clear. You have to reimburse your cities and other public educational institutions for their reimbursements, as long as those reimbursements weren't already covered by another source. So again, if the federal government already gave your school money for those specific expenses, then you don't need to reimburse them again. But for cities, I know they have not gotten, a lot of them have not gotten direct federal funding at all. So in that case, I would say you have to make sure that the cities are taken care of in terms of their reimbursable expenses. Is there an example between an agreement? Yes, that's on the covid.ks.gov website or the Kansas Association of Counties website. If a subrecipient does not submit their report, is the county still responsible? I think so. The counties are responsible for ensuring that subrecipients submit their reports. You can not provide them reimbursements unless they give you the reports, or not disperse funds until they give you reports. That's up to you how you want to do that. You can also choose to require prior certification of appropriate use, like an MOU, for example, that says you are legally required to provide these reports. But yes, you are responsible for ensuring that subrecipients are submitting their reports, but there's multiple mechanisms that we've laid out to ensure accountability across everybody that's involved, including an MOU, including the mechanisms by which you disperse funds. Hopefully everyone can still hear me. So can the reimbursement reports or direct aid plans be submitted early? Yes. Is the reimbursement form only for reimbursing costs? Yes. The August 15th reimbursement report is only for reimbursement of costs. Moving forward after August 15th, you'll be able to outline your expenditures that are not reimbursements. So again, the August 15th report is only for reimbursements. Is the report required even if a county did not expend funds during the retrospective period? Yes, just indicate 0 in expenditures in the summary. We want to get the reports no matter what, just so we can account for it in our master spreadsheet. The reports are due here. The deadlines are clearly illustrated here. Can counties create a fund using CRF allocation to cover the costs that might come up over the next few months, including costs associated with ineligible expenses? You can't set aside money to pay for the costs of ineligible expenses. You can budget funds for specific COVID-19 related priorities like we talked about before. So you can budget $10,000 generally for future PPE purchases, but you can't set aside money for paying the costs associated with accidentally buying something that was ineligible. And the goal of the direct aid plan is to ensure that nothing you're buying is ineligible. And again, you can use an MOU to say, hey, subrecipient, if you bought an ineligible expenditure, or if you made an ineligible expense, then you're responsible for paying the county that fund. So again, you can provide an MOU that does that. EINs, this has been a huge question. So we're gonna say now, knowing all of the different issues with EINs, make your best attempt to report the EIN. If it's not available, it's difficult to obtain, or something like that, it is not required, just let us know the business name or any other information of that business or entity. Again, EIN, please try your best, but it's not required now if you can't obtain it. So I know that there's been a lot of questions around Amazon vendors. So if there's a vendor in a different country, or if the vendor is just an individual person, or the vendor is something else that's difficult to obtain an EIN number for, again, just let us know who it is. You don't have to spend a bunch of time trying to track it down or put in something else. Just do your best attempt here. I'll say the goal of requiring the EIN was to save all of you some time from writing out the business name, phone number, address for every single recipient, because all we had to do was just take the EIN, put it into a spreadsheet, and it would auto-populate those things. But we totally understand if the EIN is difficult to obtain. So again, subrecipient requests a reimbursement for a July expense in September. Is that permissible? It is recommended that you try to stick to the reporting timeline, but we understand if there are differences or if there are issues, and so yes, that is okay. Do you have to submit supporting documentation? No, you just have to submit the reimbursement reporting Excel spreadsheet, but according to federal law, you have to keep the supporting documents and at the county level and maintain them for following 5 years based on federal regulations. So although you don't have to give us all of the receipts individually, or the copies of receipts, or the copies of all of your invoices, you have to manage those at the county level for the following 5 years based on federal regulations, just like we were doing for all of our expenses. So I just want to call that out. How should payroll expenses be reported? This was a big question last time. Payroll expenditures need to be a single line item for each job position. Payroll costs cannot be combined into one line item due to potential complications as a result of ambiguous reporting. So try to the best of your ability to ensure that all different payroll costs are on a different line item. So the last thing that I've gotten a lot of questions about is related to percentage set aside for indirect or administrative costs. We are recommending 5%. There's been a number of 10% thrown around. We recommend 5%. The state is recommending 5% for any state level programs. The recovery office itself is actually 0.25% of administrative costs, but we are recommending that any subrecipient use 5% as their allocated administrative costs. And again, if that needs to be adjusted based on the needs of your county, again, this is a recommendation, but that's our recommendation. based on what we've seen in other states and based on speaking to folks, again, that have been administering this program so far in other jurisdictions. Finally, there's been questions around round 1 or 2. Are businesses supposed to be in round 1 or 2? Round 1 funding was specifically provided to counties. You can use your round 1 funding to provide grants or loans to small businesses. Additional money will be provided to businesses through rounds 2 and 3, but that'll be handled at the state level. What I would say is the state level investment is meant to supplement. So if you want to create a business loan program at the county level, please do so, and outline that in the program tab. The final thing that I'll say, and again, this is online, the final thing that I'll say here is we're continuing to compile your questions. We're continuing to put them out. So keep watching for these. We're going to try to do these in more frequency, the frequently asked questions, so that you all are constantly getting your questions answered. But just note it takes us some time to ensure that everything is compliant with federal law, and we want to be very careful about that. I want to take the last 10 to 15 minutes here. Bruce, if you want to moderate for me a little bit and explain a few of the questions we're getting, I can answer those right now.
Yes, and let me put a little plug in too while we're doing that real quick, Vijay. I've seen a couple of people asking about assistance when it comes to doing the accounting. And I know that you had stressed that, you and Taylor and Shelby had all stressed that don't try to tackle this alone if you're a one-man or a two-man operation in the county, to seek help. We have at the KAC a list of about 5 or 6 organizations that we've contacted or have contacted us, saying that they are willing to have conversations with counties and work out some sort of working agreement to help with this accounting piece. And if you are in a county that has an individual or an accounting company or firm or somebody like that, and they're willing to put their name out there and maybe help neighboring counties, please get them in touch with us, and we will be happy to add them to our list. Kim is posting that list on the website even as we speak right now, so it should be up there within a matter of minutes. I know we've sent it out in several emails to folks, but I've seen people requesting it in the chat. And so, like I said, if you've got some organizations, individuals or firms in your community, and they're willing to put their name out there, we are certainly willing to help promote that, because we certainly could use the help, I think, across the state.
So I'm reading through the chat a little bit here. Oh, again, I want to underscore that point. Please, again, yeah, that get some help as needed for accounting and compliance, and use that. And there's a question on where would you want us to illustrate those. So it depends on what it's for. If it's for your county, put that in the Planned Independent Expenditures sheet. If it's for a specific program, illustrate that in the program. If it's for a specific transfer, illustrate that in the transfer. I'm reading through the questions here. There's a question about schools. Do we list future expenditures and still buy the products and then get reimbursed, or how does that work? It depends for how your county is planning on doing it. I would say for schools, the easiest thing to do for future forward investments is to provide a transfer to that school. So when the county if you're a school and the county sends you that transfer tab to fill out, list all the different expenses you want to buy moving forward, and then you'll get that bulk money, and then you can make those expenditures individually and just tell the county what you bought. If it's for reimbursements for things that you've already bought, they need to be telling your county now so they can get you the money for things that you've already bought. Again, the entire difference is what have you already spent money on that is in the reimbursement reporting sheet, and then what do you want to spend money on in the future, and that needs to be outlined in a direct aid plan through a transfer. Or some counties have told us it's easier for us if we buy it and give it to the county or give it to the school. That would be an independent expenditure at the county level, not a bulk transfer per se. So if the county's buying it for you, then you would list that in the Planned Independent Expenditures. But the easier way to do it is just to give them a transfer and have them submit a budget. There's some questions around. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I want to knock off about 2 or 3 questions with one answer from you. There were several questions about those spending plans that are due August the 15th. Specifically, do people have to wait till those plans are approved to start spending that money? Because if people are asking for money now and they say, yeah, we're going to share it with local organizations, do they have to wait for those plans to already be approved, or can they start sharing that money now if it's in their bank account? Also, after those plans are approved, how much tinkering can you do with them before you have to get them reapproved? You have to, make big changes, little changes, every little change has to get approved, or address that issue a little bit. And then also the final question is about how long is it going to take for the office to approve all those plans? If counties have to wait for the plans to be approved before they can start implementing them or expending those funds according to the plan, is it going to be several days, weeks, a month, before those plans get approved, before they can actually start implementing them? So I saw those 3 or 4 questions in the chat.
So, in order to expend money for the direct aid plan, you have to have that plan approved.
Okay.
And the reason for that is to ensure that all of the expenditures that you're making are eligible before you make that expenditure. You can submit that plan early and we'll try to get it to you early. Our deadline for recouping funds is September 15th. So our goal is before September 15th to make sure that you all have a notice on approval or not approval. And that is a deadline for us, so we can't go past that. So
Okay.
by September 15th, we will have all of the plans approved. There's a question that we've gotten quite a bit on schools, and if schools need to buy things, for the fall, how do they do that in terms of a direct aid plan? So 2 things. One is schools have gotten money from KSDE as well. There's lots of money from KSDE that they already have access to, that they have been able to buy things, buy different COVID-related items using. That's one pot of money that's been available. The second pot of money that's available is the reimbursement. So if they've already bought things to start, again, the reporting period is from March 1st to July 31st. So if they're already buying things to start school, you can reimburse those as long as it's within that reporting period, right? So they can buy whatever they need to buy for whatever they need to buy, as long as it's within the reimbursement reporting period. And then if there's a transfer that you want to make to them moving forward, it depends how you want to do it. So if schools are willing to take on that cost, and then, but they're running the risk of maybe some of the things that they're asking for moving forward are not COVID-19 related. So that determination has to be made, and that's why the direct aid plan has to be approved first. So I would just say, tell your schools, if you need to buy things and you want to get them reimbursed, but it needs to be done within the reimbursement reporting period. Otherwise, they have to wait until the direct aid plan is approved or foot the cost themselves now and buy those things and then get them reimbursed through the plan later or something like that, if that makes sense. So the next couple of questions, sorry, I'm just going down the list. So there's a few questions specifically related to an eligibility of an expenditure. So I would say the litmus test is, and again, I know you guys are all submitting guidance interpretation requests because that's the official avenue to get a determination on these things. But as you are thinking about it at the county level, it is that expense necessary to respond to the public health emergency that we are in right now due to COVID-19, both the economic effects of COVID-19, what it has done to businesses, what it has done to schools, and also how do we combat disease spread. So it has to directly mitigate the effects of COVID-19 or directly mitigate the emergency, whether it be the economic emergency or whether it be the public health emergency caused by COVID-19. If you're talking about the economic emergency, again, only small businesses are allowed to have their revenues accounted for through grants or loans. Public institutions or other entities are not able to do that under the current guidance. So You can provide money, and again, go back to the municipality toolkit, and go back to that roadmap that we laid out for you. Those are clear ideas of how you can kind of manage these funds. So, for example, if somebody's asking you for a specific, I saw an example of a bus, for example. They need to be able to justify how that is, one, not budgeted for already, two, how that is directly related to the COVID-19 emergency and responding to the COVID-19 emergency, or how that is clearly needed for them to respond to the emergency at the school level. And then finally, they should be able to point to specific federal guidance or specific examples or something in either the toolkit or the federal FAQs, or as something that gives you a justification why they were able to make that expense. So that's how we're thinking about it, and that's how I would say you should frame all of those different requests that you're getting at the local level. There's a question on guidance on how much reimbursements are made to subrecipients. That is a county level decision. I would say it depends on the priorities of your county. So if you want a lot of money associated with a business loan program, obviously that impacts how much money that you're going to be providing in reimbursements. But again, the resolution clearly says schools and cities, they have to be, and other public institutions have to be taken care of. So I would just say keep your priorities and goals of your county in mind as you're putting together your reimbursements. And the other thing that I'll say on that is on Monday, you'll see what the state is planning on investing in. So that can be an indication to you, hey, maybe I don't need to provide specific funds as much as I was thinking about providing to this certain entity, because the state is actually kicking in based on those priorities that the state has outlined. I know we're at 3 o'clock here, but I'm going to answer a few more questions before we end. So the other question that we've been getting quite a bit is like how much of the county and city or the city and schools do I need to reimburse? So there needs to be a process that for all COVID-19 expenses that those schools have or those cities have, that there is a process to get all of those things reimbursed, just like the county is getting their funds reimbursed. So the two things that I would say to keep into account as you're doing that, one is if they've gotten money from other sources like the federal government to reimburse those funds, then you don't need to reimburse those funds because you can't double count. Two is, are those specific COVID-19 related expenses? So again, is it specifically related to the emergency that we have right now? And is that an expense that's needed related to COVID-19? And so those are the two things that I would say. The reasons in which you wouldn't reimburse the county is because it is a non-COVID-19 related expenditure directly related to COVID-19, or it is something that, like I said before, is something that has already been reimbursed at some other juncture. Counties can make that determination at the county level on specific kind of COVID-19 related expenses. If there's still a dispute, then you can submit a guidance interpretation request. But I would try to keep it towards what is specifically COVID-19 related. Okay. So Bruce, are there any other questions that you want me to answer? Right before you do that, I'm sorry. This is a good question. How do you define required closure? Required closure is because of a stay-at-home order at the local or state level. So a business voluntarily or mandated closing their business because of COVID-19. So the guidance does say if a business, even if you, like, let's say you're in a county that didn't have a stay-at-home order, but the business voluntarily closed their doors because they wanted to protect their customers and employees, that is still eligible under the federal guidance. But I would start with, if you were under a state stay-at-home order, or if you were under a local stay-at-home order, or you were a part of the county level reopening plan or the state level reopening plan, I know that at the state level, we stopped our reopening plan, but we stopped our statewide stay-at-home order, but the county still have specific businesses that are closed based on a specific county ordinance or something like that. So it's dependent on what county you live in and what the state was doing at that time. So, so there's a question from the league here about, I don't see in section 7 in the resolution where it says it's optional to reimburse cities and schools. It is not optional, and that's what I've been trying to illustrate here. The only way in which you don't reimburse a city or school is if it's not a COVID-19 related expense. So if it is a COVID-19 related expense, you have to reimburse the cities and schools. Or if the city or school already got money for that specific expense from somebody else, then you don't reimburse them. But yeah, I want to be very clear. I never said that it's optional to reimburse cities or schools for COVID-19 related expenses.
And Vijay, let me jump in and address some of the questions that I'm seeing too, that the way these Zooms are structured is we're trying to comply with the Kansas Open Meetings Act. And so we really can't have back and forth dialogue per se as much as we'd like to. So we're trying to make sure we meet the letter of the law because of the limitations we have to work within. And then also, let me put out there that we have set up a listserv as a result of the conversations that we saw on Wednesday. Our our email provider allows us to have listservs. So if you are interested in being a part of that listserv, send your name and email address and the county that you're in to us, and then we will put you on that listserv. It's completely optional, it's completely voluntary, it's completely free, but it'll be an opportunity for all of you to interact with one another. So if you have a question, you can type it into the listserv, hit send, and you can get responses from all of your peers that are also signed up on the listserv as well. If you're not familiar with how a listserv works, don't be afraid to reach out to me, and I'm happy to talk with you about it and show you and demonstrate how a listserv would work. But if you're interested in being added to the listserv, send an email to any of the contacts that you normally work with at the KAC. So if you work with Jay on a regular basis, or you work with myself or Kimberly, send an email with your name, your email address, and the county that you're in, and we'll make sure that you get added to that listserv, and then you can start sharing comments, ideas, questions. It's a great way to stay in touch with one another and not feel so isolated. So if you have a question, you can pose it to the group and maybe get 4 or 5 different good answers to your questions. So with that, anything else, Vijay, before we wrap it up?
I'm going to add one or two things. And so I'm reading through these here, and I want to make sure I'm addressing all of the ones that I can address right now. So let's see here.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let's see here. Can you remind us of the time frame for reimbursements? Yes, so it's March 1st to July 31st is the first reporting period. The other question that we were getting here is, can you the reimbursement report going to be approved by the state? We're also going to be reviewing the reimbursement report. But again, it's the first pass is done at the county level, right? So you all need to be looking through those and seeing that they're COVID related. But we're also obviously going to be reviewing your reimbursement report as well as a part of our compliance and accountability process. The other question is, what if a subrecipient spends some of their allocation accidentally on a non-approved item? Again, use the MOU or subrecipient resolution template to create some sort of shared accountability between whoever you're providing funds to, and put the onus on them to provide you funds if they are spending on an ineligible expense. If there's a crazy example of this, or something awful happens or what have you, we'll work with you. What we can do right now is put in the structures and processes in place to ensure accountability. And that includes putting in an MOU, that includes the direct aid plan, that includes making sure that they're itemizing all of their expenditures or planned expenditures in a transfer, or clearly writing out that budget narrative. I know that filling out the forms is difficult and it's a lot of work, but the goal is to catch things beforehand and to ensure compliance long-term and give you all an idea and track all of this. So all of these, as much as they are tools for us to see how everything is being spent at the state level, they are tools for you all to ensure that you all are being able to have the information you need to manage these funds in an accountable way, knowing that there will be a federal audit coming down the line, and we want to protect everybody as much as possible. Counties will have the ability to amend their direct aid plan prior to recoupment of funds. So the presentation is already on the website. Everything I'm saying via words right now will be via the webinar and YouTube link. We will try our best to put those all into an FAQ version, just like we did today. I'm going to go ahead and end for today. Monday on 1 p.m., look out for the steering committee meeting. Again, next Wednesday, we'll have our next webinar going through economic development and answering any additional questions. Next week as well is our timeline for getting the first round of guidance interpretations out to you all. And those will be posted in a central location on our website. So I want to thank Bruce for putting this on. Appreciate everyone being patient with me and listening to my voice for an hour and 12 minutes. But I hope everyone has a good weekend, and we'll continue to get you the information you need. And I appreciate everyone's work. I know this is a lot, but it's difficult, but we're doing our best, and we will continue to work with you to get you the information you need.
All right, Vijay, we cannot thank you enough for what you're doing. Folks, you guys don't realize how hard he is working, and the rest of the recovery office is working behind the scenes. I can show you directly 3, maybe even 4 things that they did today as a result of the conversations that you all had on Wednesday during the last call. And so they're trying to be extremely responsive as best as they can. So we appreciate the patience. We appreciate all the hard work from everybody that's involved in this. Don't forget, if you want to be put onto the distribution list, please send to us, the KAC staff, an email with your name, your email address, and the county that you're in. Go to the Sparks website for all this information. We will have the Zoom link up as soon as we possibly can. It doesn't take too long for us to get it loaded up and queued up. And then also, if you have an accounting firm that is interested in participating and being a part of this and helping us out, please send that information to me, and we'll be sure to add that to our list. And the list is now up on the KAC website, so kansascounties.org, and you can find the list of the organizations that have expressed an interest in helping us with the management of these monies. So with that, folks, stay healthy, stay cool. I know it's very hot out there. In about 15 minutes, the governor is going to come on with her Friday afternoon updates with us. So until then, have a great rest of the day and have a great weekend. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.